I kept his name on the board. That is the first thing my advisors will tell you, if you ask them what I am. They will lower their eyes and say it carefully, that the Queen kept a dead man's name in the active column for 7 years, season after season, through 2 new garrison rotations, and the full treaty proceedings, and the long, gray work of rebuilding the Eastern Pass. They will say it the way they said it to my face, gently, as if the problem were my grief and not their accounting. They were not wrong that it was grief. I do not pretend otherwise. But they were wrong about the column. Corvan Dale was a supply attaché. That is what the compact registry listed him as, a human male, mid-rank, assigned to the Vethek Crossing garrison for the duration of the Cathini campaign. He managed the ration ledgers. He counted crates. He was the man who always arrived at briefings slightly early and stood at the back so the taller officers could see the maps. He had the kind of face that people remember only after they have needed him once. Steady eyes, a particular stillness in the jaw, hands that moved with more patience than hurry. He was not impressive. He would have been the first to say so. I heard him say something close to it once, early in his assignment, when one of my court advisors asked him to justify a rerouted supply line that had saved the northern garrison's food stores through a 7-day ice closure. He looked at the advisor, then at me, and said, very simply, that someone had to think about the ice. Someone had to think about the ice. That is the kind of man he was. The Catheni shelled the Eastern Pass on the 41st day of the spring offensive. The garrison held the crossing for 11 hours before the order came to fall back. The record shows that the withdrawal was orderly, that casualties were controlled, that the armored column reached the secondary line intact. What the record does not show, because no one filed a formal account in the chaos of the retreat, is why the column made it. Who it was who stayed behind at the supply depot when the fuel cells for the armored movers were discovered to be locked in a cache the retreating garrison had no key for, because the cache officer was among the first casualties of the shelling, and the secondary key was in a crate 3 levels down. Corvin found the crate. I know this because the column sergeant told me, 6 weeks after the battle, quietly, as an aside, not understanding that it mattered. He was already moving on to the next item. I stopped him. He was surprised that I wanted the name. I was surprised that he did not understand why. The shelling resumed while Corvin was still at the depot. The cache officer was dead. The column was already moving. No one went back for him, because going back was not survivable, and he had told them not to. The sergeant said he had said it without dramatics, as if it were simply the next practical thing. The compact declared him dead 40 days later. Standard procedure. Body unrecovered, last known position in the active shelling zone, no signal contact. I did not dispute the declaration. I am a queen, not a fool. I understood what the paperwork required. But I did not take his name off the board. My senior advisor came to me twice a year, every year, and asked me, each time, to let the administrative error be corrected. He was careful. He used words like tidiness, and accurate record, and relief from uncertainty. I let him finish. Then I said no. The board on the garrison wall at Vethek Crossing shows the active roster of the mountain attachés. It is an old board, Elthari carved, with names etched in rotating mineral ink that deepens when pressed, and fades if the name is not refreshed. The garrison staff refreshed every name on the board at the turn of each season, as tradition requires, including his. They refreshed it because I told them to. That is what I can tell you about the 7 years, the cold work, the reconstruction, the treaty negotiations with the Cathini Provisional Government, which I attended, and from which I returned with what my advisors called a favorable settlement and what I called an agreement not to die further. The long business of being a queen. The board. He came back on a morning in late autumn. I was in the lower courtyard reviewing the gate ledger when the gate guard came to me. He was trying very hard to keep his face neutral. He was not succeeding. He said there was a man at the outer gate asking for entry clearance. I said that was what outer gates were for. He said the man had given his name as Corvan Dale, compact supply attaché, former assignment Vethek Crossing garrison, and that the name matched an active entry in the mountain roster. I put down the ledger. I am not certain what my face did. I hope it did nothing that required explanation. I walked to the gate. He was standing in the arch of the outer passage. The mountain light was behind him, the pale autumn kind that has no warmth in it. He was thinner than I remembered. His hair had more gray in it, cut close the way the Cathini-held territories did it, and he had a scar along the left jaw that had healed badly, the way scars do when there is no medic available for the first days. He was wearing civilian transit clothes, nothing that marked him as anything. He had a single pack on one shoulder. He was looking at me with an expression I had not seen before on his face. He had always been a composed man, steady, the man at the back of the briefing room who did not need to be noticed. But standing in that arch, looking at me, he had the face of a man who had prepared himself for something and was not certain, now that the moment had come, that he had prepared correctly. I stood still for what I imagine was a very long time. I was counting without meaning to. Heartbeats, or something like them. What I was doing, I understand now, was waiting for the image to contradict itself, for something to announce it was not real, that such moments happen in old stories and not in gate ledger reviews on cold autumn mornings. The world did not oblige, he remained. He did not say anything, watching me with the same patience he had always watched everything, waiting, as he always waited, for the practical next thing. I said his name, not the formal address, not his rank or his title or the long designation the compact roster gives every assigned attaché. His name, the short form, the one I had used once at the end of a very long garrison inspection, without ceremony, because the occasion had been ordinary, and he had seemed like a man who preferred ordinary. Corvan. He closed his eyes. Not dramatically. Just briefly, the way a man does when something held under pressure is finally allowed to rest. Then he opened them again, and the expression on his face was the one I had been looking for in the mountain light, the one that told me the image would not contradict itself. He said, very quietly, that he had not been certain I would still be at the crossing. I told him I was still at the crossing. He said he had not been certain the gate would have his name. I told him the gate had his name. He looked at me for a moment, then he said that he was sorry it had taken 7 years. I told him that 7 years was a long time to think about the ice. He laughed. It was a short, surprised sound, the kind that comes out before a person decides whether to let it. Then it settled into something quieter. He looked down for a moment at the pack on his shoulder, then back at me, and I saw in his face exactly what I had known when I told the garrison to keep refreshing his name, that he had never understood why anyone would bother to look for him specifically, that he had always believed himself to be the man at the back of the room who managed the ledgers and counted the crates and was not, particularly, the kind of man around whom the story turned. He was wrong about that. He had been wrong about it for as long as I had known him. I told him his name was still in the active column. I told him I needed someone to think about the ice. The years were gone. I cannot give him those back, and I did not pretend otherwise. The world we had both known when he shipped out had moved on in the way that worlds do. Different names on different ledgers, different settlements in place, different silences in the garrison hall where his crates used to be stacked. Bittersweet is the word my advisors might use. I prefer accurate. He took the post beside me, not beneath me, beside me. He said yes before I finished explaining it. He put down the pack. That evening I walked back to the garrison board and looked at his name in the mineral ink, deep and clear in the column that had always said active. I had always known I was right to leave it there. Standing in that courtyard with the autumn light going gray around the mountain, I finally understood that he had not known it. That was the part that mattered, that he knew it now.